to the Jungle Book. So this is your first of your lectures on reactivity, and specifically the title of these lectures is going to be Firefighting Reactivity. Reactivity is something that can often be really all-consuming for people. It's I deliver seminars across the world on the topic in itself and ways in which we can deal with it and help our dogs gain confidence. This first lecture is about the proactive things that we can do to prevent our dogs developing behaviour that is reactive. So obviously you guys are going to follow me over the next 12 months with my two puppies, Jungle, my Belgian Malinois, and Hottie, my Border Collie puppy. So both of those dogs actually have predisposed traits that could develop into reactive behaviour. And as a trainer, as an owner, I need to be hypervigilant and proactive in how I raise them to avoid them developing behavioural issues that could be problematic long term. So let's discuss what reactivity is, and this is my definition of what reactivity is. By definition, I define reactivity as behaviour where the dog, without any interference, I should say, and no necessarily any contact, the dog displays behaviour that is inappropriate, aggressive, apprehensive, etc. If the dog is interfered with, that's a different. For me, that's different. If a dog is, say for example, a dog jumps on your dog's head and your dog says, leave me alone, and does so with, an air snap or whatever, that's how dogs communicate. And I want to be really clear about that, the distinction between reactive behaviour and behaviour that really is normal dog body language, okay? So we tend to misinterpret those two things, what is a dog being a dog and a dog then being reactive, and how reactivity can develop, okay? So let's discuss about reactivity. Reactivity, in my mind, can be defined by or caused by certain factors, and I'm going to talk about those factors now. So the first one, okay, is genetics, okay? And this is something that we need to be really mindful of. Certainly in the process of when we pick our puppy, or the type of dog that we have, or the breed that we choose. So the two dogs that I have, obviously I know a lot about their genetics. I bred one of them, I bred my Border Collie puppy, so I know a lot about her genetics. And my Belgian Malinois, I know a lot about her genetics as well. I know her mother and her father relatively well in terms of where they come from. I know cousins and relations or siblings, etc. So I have a really vast array of information to go with. Not everybody's going to have that insight, and that's absolutely fine, but you can certainly assume that certain breed characteristics could and may develop into reactive behaviour. So for example, pastoral breeds, herding breeds that want to chase, that can develop into reactive behaviour. Terriers, they get frustrated very quickly, because again that's part of their breed characteristics, and they're movement orientated. Again, that could develop into reactive behaviour. So genetics is going to play a very big part. With my two dogs, obviously the breeds I have are Border Collie, okay, and she's actually from herding or sheepdog lines, in the sense that her parents are, although both of them do dog sports, they're very one or two generations away from sheepdog line. So that would mean that she would show traits that could develop into reactivity. Her mother has a really strong desire to herd, and when she was very young, when she was about 8 weeks old, she had a very strong instinct to herd my other dogs, and that was something I was super vigilant on when raising her. And she's an absolute model citizen now. But it was something that could be within this puppy, so that would be something I would be mindful of. My second puppy, okay, is a Malinois. And Malinois are notoriously a breed of dog that are very high drive. They're incredibly intense, and they have behaviour that can be deemed reactive. So they get frustrated very easily. They can show strong signs of behaviour that may be deemed aggressive. For example, my puppy likes to mouth. She's very mouthy. When she was tiny, she used to want to grab my clothing. She likes to bite things. She likes to have things in her mouth. She's obsessed about tugging. All that sort of stuff could develop into reactive behaviour. So genetics is going to be definitely a part, but certainly for the two breeds that I've got, and for the lineage of which they're from. Now, as a professional dog trainer and somebody that partakes in sports, I looked for that type of dog. That's why I actually gravitated to both of those dogs, because they had traits that I could utilize for my own gains. But obviously the flip side is ensuring that I teach them skills that allow them to be great family pets and safe, etc. around people and dogs, okay? So, first thing is genetics. Second thing, okay, is socialization. And this can obviously have a really, really massive impact into how your dog turns out and how it ends up in terms of appropriate socialization. So, a massive thing about socialization, people feel obligated to take their puppy and to expose it to as many things and as many environments and as many dogs and as many people as they possibly can within a relatively short space of time. I actually, personally, I steer away from doing that, and I perceive socialization as lessons for my dog to experience. So when my puppies are young, certainly within that pivotal early stages of their development, I'm very, very cautious about the experiences they have and who and what I socialise them with. So, for example, obviously at this current time, we are in an isolated period where we can't take our dogs necessarily where we always would, so to friends' homes or to to dog training or to parks where we frequent and meet friends. We have to think laterally about how we socialise. The irony is that's not actually a bad thing, to be a little bit more restricted in what our dog can be exposed to. Now, if your dog has a temperament issue, this is actually a blessing to be forced to create distance from others, because that's going to be a huge asset when you're overcoming confidence and building confidence with your dog that's apprehensive or anxious. So with my two dogs, genetics is going to massively play a part, because both those breeds specifically and where they come from may have behavioural problems or traits that I would perceive as an asset that could develop into reactive behaviour, okay? Socialisation, thinking of being mindful about how I socialise my puppies in this formative stage is really critical. Being cautious, creating distance, again, social distances is going to be our friend at this moment in time, and being mindful about what they experience, okay? Third reason why dogs tend to be reactive or have behaviour that's reactive is understanding. And when we talk about understanding, we are talking about the dog's training and self-control or impulse control. Okay? So, my dog's understanding, both of these puppies obviously in the midst of learning skills and learning behaviours that are going to be beneficial to me long term. The key things that I'm going to be focusing on in their early stages, and certainly for the initial part of their development, is a recall, okay, a control position, and preferably a sit and a down, okay, and it's your choice, which is Susan Garrett's mantra or training principle, which is where the dog seeks reinforcement, or the accesses reinforcement via me. So those three things are crucial to raising a dog that is predisposed to reactive behaviour, but understands and is able to exhibit self-control, impulse control, and also understands to be called away from distractions, irrespective of the level of distraction. Understands that if I cue them to sit or down, they have to do so irrespective of the distraction and remain in that position until being given permission to release from that position. And also understanding that the way to access the things they want, i.e. run with the other dogs or chase something or look at something, is by offering behaviour that I deem acceptable and I want. Okay, so those three things are going to massively help me when I'm preparing these dogs for the big wide world. Okay, so these are going to be their initial, in the first 12 months of their life, I'm going to be focusing really tightly on these things. Now, the other aspects of their training can be added on as bonuses. So all the sexy stuff, shaping stuff, etc., that would be added on. And shaping is a crucial aspect, another key component, to teach them to deal with frustration, okay? And to teach them to use their brain when they see something that causes them uncertainty or frustration, and being able to cope with that little level of frustration. So shaping and frustration tolerance are key to creating a dog that can cope with a situation that could cause them to be reactive. All right? So just to recap, genetics, socialization, understanding. The fourth thing, hopefully, I can avoid. And this is a trauma to the dog. So the fourth thing is something that I hopefully can avoid, and that is a trauma to the dog or to myself. Now that would be when my dog gets into a situation largely down to socialization or an inappropriate encounter, or the dog has an unfortunate incident happen, which causes me to have a level of trauma. That could be where I feel anxiety, I see my dog being attacked, or my dog attacks another dog, and I experience a level of trauma, which causes me to feel a little bit anxious, and then that can often create a pattern where the dog sees other dogs, I feel anxious, the dog is already on edge as it is, and that creates a cycle which can cause the dog to be reactive. Now at this point, neither of my puppies have had anything of or trauma that they have been victim to as yet. Now that is not to say that there is a high probability that between the ages of 6 to 10 months, okay, when they enter adolescence or start adolescence, they are more than likely, especially females, to be the recipient of inappropriate social interaction, or they're going to be hormonal, so they may have a hormone change, which may then create behaviour that is deemed reactive. So for example, when females start to have a season for the first time, they can often get a little bit nervous and apprehensive about strange things. So spookiness, startle barking, etc., etc. That can often occur between 6 and 10 months. Generally, depending on the breed, it can vary. If they have a season, near to 6 months, it might be slightly beforehand. If it's closer to 10 months or beyond, Jungle is just 7.5, 8 months. She hasn't shown any spooky behaviour as yet, but I'm sure it's going to be imminent in anticipation of her having her first season. That can cause me to have a level of trauma, or her to bark at something and say another dog, and the other dog then act inappropriately towards her, and that can often create a level of trauma. Alright? So just to recap specifically of the things that are going on in my head when it comes to my two puppies. I need to be mindful of genetics and the part that can play with both of those puppies to be proactive and to ensure that they don't develop or their desire to chase and to get frustrated, which is traits that we would look for in sports dogs, or certainly in working breeds. They have that desire to chase things and to hunt things and to herd things. That's instinctive. That can often be a cause of reactive behaviour. So I need to be mindful of not allowing those to become problematic. Second thing is socialisation. Again, this time that we're in is actually beneficial for socialisation because we are restricted in the access and the contact that we have with other dogs, people, etc. And it means that we have to be more creative about our socialisation. For example, I posted a video where I showed how with the tiny puppy, I am playing with her on some bags to create noise, and I had some music in the background and some noises, etc., to start to expose her to little things that she's going to face in the big wide world and to build her confidence up. In terms of her meeting other dogs, she's having limited interaction with my other dogs, not only from a safety point of view, but from an experience point of view, and she would be meeting them in a strategic order. Okay. Then we're going to move on to understanding, to create, so both of them have been taught to have self-control and to show impulse control and to have an understanding of a recall and to sit and down on cue, and obviously we've done shaping with them, so teaching them to have a level of tolerance to frustration, okay, and to problem solve. That's a really, really key part of being proactive when we're talking about reactivity. Fourth thing is the dog trauma that at this time neither of them have been victim to, but it's highly likely between those crucial ages, between 6 and 10 months, they may be the recipient of inappropriate social contact, which could develop into the dog being reactive towards other dogs. So the final consideration when we're discussing contributing factors to reactivity or reactive behaviour, or behaviour that is qualified as reactive, is a physical element, okay? And this is the one that, to a degree, I can only hope, if I'm being truthful. So when I was discussing physical, there is things that the dog, certainly in terms of physical well-being, that we can, to a degree, hopefully be proactive in the sense of seeking out dogs that have come from the parents and siblings in a line that is healthy, hopefully within reason, fingers crossed. So parents that have been health tested, there's no hereditary issues, there's no autoimmune or thyroid concerns within the lineage. That's something that we can be proactive about. There is also the aspect where we discuss if the dog has any, if it unfortunately has any underlying physical issues or health problems that develop later on that could become reactive. So if the dog has, for example, an earache or a toothache, those are things that could become reactive. A classic thing when dogs can develop certainly an apprehension about dogs approaching them is when the dog starts to teeth. So that's something that I will absolutely be mindful of. When my puppies start to teeth, they obviously get sore mouths. They're going to be more sensitive with dogs approaching them from the front. That can often, especially if they're being socialised with other puppies will often approach each other from the front and do licking and appeasement behaviour around the face. If that's to two puppies and one is in that pivotal time when they're teething and they've got a sensitive face or sensitive mouth, that can become a catalyst for reactive behaviour. So that's something that I will be mindful of, okay? So we're talking about physical health. The other thing that we need to consider, and this is the one that we need to be always balancing when we're talking about physical well-being, is physical exertion, physical exercise, okay? What physical stimulation. What can I do with my dog physically within the first year of their life, or certainly in the next couple of weeks or a month or so, to ensure that they are getting physical satisfaction when we are restricted, whether it be because of the current restrictions, or even if these weren't in place, what can I do with my puppy to ensure that they're getting physical stimulation but without causing them any long-term damage or impact. So obviously I need to be mindful of how much exercise my puppy gets, because the long-term fallout of that is if my dog develops a degenerative disease, for example, if it has arthritis caused by over-exercising and their joints don't develop, or if they have a physical issue caused by inappropriate exercise, for example, lots of ball throwing when they're young, that can often cause physical issues later on. That can also contribute to a pain factor, which can contribute to or cause reactive behaviour. So again, I need to be mindful of that. With my puppies, when I exercise them, or I'm very cautious about where they go, I like them to go into areas where there are wooded or uneven surfaces, so they're using their body to move around. They're not just flat out running or chasing my other dogs unnecessarily. They are learning to manoeuvre, and they have to slow down their rhythm, and they have to look down below and look where their feet are going because of the uneven surfaces. That's a great way to build up physical strength and dexterity. Also, in terms of their physical well-being, I'm doing physical conditioning slowly as they develop, always putting the dog's physical well-being above everything else. Do it slowly and do it strategically. So, for example, I start to as they get older, I'll start to work on core strength exercises and balancing exercises. So hopefully what I'm doing is creating a dog that's going to be very physically fit and physically well, so that therefore any underlying physical issues aren't going to become a causation of become associated with pain and then therefore discomfort, which could also contribute to reactive behaviour. Okay, so this is my thinking with my puppies at the moment. Whenever I bring a puppy in my home, I consider these factors, because the balance between reactivity and behaviours that I would look for in dogs is a very, very thin line. Behaviours that would be deemed appropriate, so a dog that has a strong desire to chase is actually, for a lot of people, it's an asset, especially those of us that compete in dog sports. The dog's desire to chase and to run fast and have a lot of intensity are desirable traits. Now that can be problematic when we're talking about domestic situations, and I need to constantly balance between the two things. Okay, so this is the first lecture I'm doing on firefighting reactivity. Hopefully it's been helpful in giving you my thoughts about my young puppies and the things that I would be doing to stay ahead of any potential problems that they may have. Both of them at the moment are absolutely super little puppies and have stacks of potential and have loads of characteristics that I absolutely adore. There is things, for example, with that Jungle's definitely shown, where she can be quite obsessive about birds, for example, or moving things. That could develop into a problem, so that's on my to-do list at her age. Over the next 12 months that you follow me, you're going to see lots of these webinars where I'm keeping you updated to the problems and challenges that I'm having and the things that I'm doing to counteract it, to create two dogs that can be absolute model citizens and I can take anywhere and socialise and mix with other people and dogs, and I know that they're going to be great advertisements for themselves, for me, and for the way in which I rear them. Hopefully this has been helpful. Post a comment in the thread if you want to have any more content on this. For now, enjoy your dogs, stay safe and stay positive.